Welcome to Let's Talk Impact. Tonight we're talking about Be the Village. We've all heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, but thriving communities require a village too. Too often we wait for someone else to solve problems, show up, or lead. Tonight we're asking a different question. What if we became the village we've been waiting for? We'll discuss community engagement, coalition building, civic responsibility, and the everyday actions that strengthen our neighborhoods. I want to welcome our guests. We've got Joseph Trahan, Maquetta Ledette, and joining us will be Christy Hernandez and Abigail Morales. So let's talk impact. I'm going to start with a very basic question to kick us off. What does Be the Village mean to you personally? Hello, Abigail. I just introduced you. We're just getting started. So the first question is, what does Be the Village mean to you personally? And any one of you can pick up.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll jump in and share. I think that Be the Village means that, we see ourselves as part of the solution.
Yes.
And, when I think about being a village in our community, we see where we can contribute. Um, I think that that's the power in the village is not um, being a hero. It's just knowing how you contribute to the solution. So when I hear Be the Village, I hear a call to action, like to ownership and to what assets and value can you add to the community as a member of that community, and what can you pass on to other people. Um, and so it's a shared ownership and shared responsibility when I hear Be the Village.
For
I
me,
agree.
be the village means recognizing that strong communities are built when ordinary people choose to support one another and work together. And that is, in a way, exhibited by volunteering your time and your talents, whether it be with civic organizations, nonprofit organizations, or even political organizations like me. Mentoring young people, that's a huge topic right now, especially as someone who's based in Beaumont with Beaumont Independent School District. Um, Checking in on your elderly neighbors, making sure that people are aware of what's taking place in their community. Um, Be the village comes from the proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. But of course, that expands beyond that, and it ultimately takes a village to raise a community. And look forward to hearing more of other people's perspectives.
I do think it's an interesting point, too. A lot of people, when they talk about getting involved in organizations, everybody thinks, I think we're having some technical problems. Let me text him real quick. Everybody thinks, okay, apologies. All right. Everyone thinks that they have to be an expert in something or have some major skill or education or experience, and that's what's beautiful about community building, right? Is there's a space for everyone. There's all kinds of things that are needed, from transportation to creating information to research to speaking and all kinds of things, community service. So there's really no area that we don't need anyone's special skills and talents, and we've all got something we can contribute. So I think that's an important part of that equation. So aside from just being stressed out about what skills they may have that are marketable or useful, why do you think people feel disconnected from their communities today?
Well, from my perspective, I think that a strong sense of community has changed over time, and a lot of that has to do with, I think, the stratification of media, the use of social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And you'd think that because we're exposed to more people in real time, that it would somehow bring communities closer together. But if anything, it's actually made it to where oftentimes people only interact with themselves each other virtually. Um, and you start seeing a lot of historically civic organizations who have underperformed in terms of attendance and participation. The same thing you see whenever you're trying to have community events, irrespective of what county or state you're in. Um, I think too, oftentimes everyday people become so busy in their own lives, trying to focus on taking care of themselves, holding down a job, paying their bills, dealing with family issues and struggles. There are a lot of distractions. And so I think there are a number of people who are well meaning. If you can get some FaceTime with them, you'll see that they do care about their community and they have certain concerns and certain talents that they can offer up. But when you put everything that I've mentioned together, I think it can be quite difficult to really know how you as an individual can make a difference. I think people tend to think that there are issues that are greater than themselves and that somehow they are not equipped or have the money or the notoriety to be able to affect change. And I think it's important for all of us as community members and leaders to remind people that any movement, any area of improvement, it was not from the top down, it was from the bottom up. And making sure your voice is heard to affect change and influence people that are at the top to better reflect the community.
That's a very good point. Something we were talking about today. A lot of our community organizations, we see a lot of coalition building here in Southeast Texas right now. Community organizations connecting, doing events together. And when you talk about money, money is often a deterrent, right? People are like, I can't afford this, and you think it costs tons of money to do all these things. But one of the beautiful things about working in your community with everyone else is someone probably has a space. Someone probably has a digital life that they can provide. Like you start connecting, and all of a sudden you can support each other with the things you have access to. And that requires less money up front. So, a lot of things you can do on a grassroots basis with your community by just getting involved and making those connections.
Mhm.
Does anyone want to add anything to that?
No, I just agree with that. This the being able to find those common wins. And so one of the ways that I have been able to be successful with events is just finding, where we have common pains. We call that
Mhm.
we share pains and things that we problems that we want to solve, and then you'll find that people are they'll be willing to invest in providing resources. And so oftentimes we've been able to connect with someone who has a build, and even people who have money that can pay for some of the things that have some of the overhead, and they'll help cover the cost there. So, but those pain points is critical. Finding those common pain points and being able to communicate that to other stakeholders so that they will be willing to participate in the success.
What do you guys think is, we see a lot of people, they talk a lot about things they care about. And there's a lot of work encouraging people to vote about things they care about. What do you think is the major difference for someone if they between just caring about an issue and getting involved? What difference does that make, and how could someone go about doing that?
I think it like matters how it touches their life, right? Like if it touches you personally, you're more likely to get involved. But also we have to, like as advocates and people who are in this space, make it easy for people to be involved. I can care all day about an issue, but if I don't know how to do anything about it, I'm not going to be able to go and enter these spaces confidently enough to advocate for myself or for my family or for my issue because I just don't know. I don't know have the know-how, and not everybody has that drive to overcome that barrier. And so, not just making it easy for people to enter the space, but also showing them why it matters, how it touches their life. Those are two things that we need to do for everyone. Is like this issue affects you this way, but this is how you can make a difference toward it.
Mhm.
I agree. I think too that hold on one second. I'm so sorry. I do entirely agree with that, right? It's about giving people that space, helping them along. To that end, I want to mention that a lot of things are happening that I think people, it's hard to know what's going on. I know, like Abigail, you host a civic coffee hour once a month that really allows for people to build community. I think someone's sound is
Sorry. Hang on.
If you could mute it, that would probably.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So what I was saying is, I know Abigail, you host a civic coffee hour regularly, and that brings the community together, a chance to connect and commiserate. There's also things like the People's Council, which we're doing through Impact, where you can join a Zoom, and we're going to talk about what's on all our local leadership agendas, so that we can feel empowered to write emails or show up and speak. So I think there's initiatives out there to try to help people feel more comfortable. What are ways that we can connect with community and pull them into these things so that they feel like they have a place?
Jen, I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Abigail said, Abby said, and then and also what you're asking now. I think that also the difference between getting people involved is the building, they're like building credibility, building trust. You know, if people have, uh,
I'm sorry, I don't know.
If you can just mute it, maybe,
It
and
is
we'll figure it
muted.
out.
she's logged in twice, but okay. So I think that building credibility, and we have to show that we are that we're committed to show commitment,
Hmm.
and so to your point of getting feedback from our communities, and then once we get feedback from them, building credibility by showing that we're willing to do that, we're doing the right thing with the feedback that they gave us. And so and that requires that we be change driven, that we willing to incorporate, consider, and really respond to the feedback that we have been given from the community. So I always look for opportunities to get the community involved, and also get outside of what what my normal space is. So my normal space may get me feedback that's similar to the way that I think and the way that I see things. But if I ask different populations that I don't spend a lot of time with, what are you interested in? And then I actually take the feedback that they give and do something with it. That helps to build credibility and trust. And once people feel like they can trust you, then they'll move when they hear your voice. And so that's what I've tried to utilize in the past. It's just proving that I'm going to take the information that you've given me, and I'm going to incorporate it in some type of way, so that you know that you can trust me with what you're sharing.
That's great, actually, yes.
Mhm.
And I do know that community surveys are a good way to do that. And then also just conversation, right?
Yes.
Conversation. People talk and they tell you. Um, all right. Well, so how do we, I know a lot of times when we get together, we hear a lot of what people's frustrations are, right? Part of community work is filling the gaps left by bad policy. It's community service, drives for different events, things to help our community feel more safe and secure. Now, the goal would ultimately be for policy to provide that to our communities, but when that's absent, communities can step in, community workers, organizers can step in and fill those gaps. What are some ways that you feel it's important for people to contribute and connect with their community? Well, I'll
I
say,
think,
go ahead. Yes, please
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, you good. Um, to contribute, I think we already know how to do that. Like we already know whenever there's a disaster, like a catastrophe, flooding, all of that. We already know how to be in community with each other. The problem is that it takes that for us to do it, like for us to practice community. And so I think it's just like a shock to the system is required in order for us to get out of that like discomfort of talking to strangers, of building that foundation, of building those relationships and that trust. So I think we need to like start really small. Like instead of let's go block walking, let's go volunteer, like let's just talk to our neighbor. Like let's just go introduce ourselves to each other, because it needs to start that small, because we're so disconnected. So I think there are ways to go, you go get involved and you go volunteer for an organization. That's great, but not everyone has the time or resource to do that. But everyone can have a conversation. And so I
Mhm.
think we need to go back to like the very fundamentals of how we build community and build trust with each other. It's just let's learn to have a conversation with each other, whether that's your checkout lady, your neighbor, somebody at your church. Like, just meet someone new and learn to just take that first step, and then eventually we'll, trust will grow. But we know how to build community, we know how to be in community with each other, we know how to forget about politics, forget about labels and all of that, and just ask, how can I help you when
Mhm.
there's a disaster? Now let's practice that in real life.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Mhm.
Yes.
It
I think
reminds. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. It
no, I
reminds
want you to
me
go
of
ahead. Go ahead.
it reminds me of this idea that I have about difficult conversations, which is only a difficult conversation because it's not a routine conversation.
Hmm.
And so it just reminds me of that I guess the pandemic and COVID kind of contributed to that a little bit, where we got so accustomed to being in our little space, and now just kind of breaking out of those patterns to connect with people again. And then not just connect with people, because we learn how to connect with people that's in our circle,
Hmm.
but now getting outside that circle and kind of restoring some of those other circles that we once had before. But I love that we do know how to build community. It just takes the being intentional about it. Mhm.
I wrote a article recently on our Substack about building community, and I thought about how, I mean, politics and religion have always been hot button topics, right? That sort of divide and inflame people. But there was a time when, regardless of what we were identified politically or religiously, we shared regional experiences, right? We
Mhm.
all know what it's like to survive a hurricane. We all know what it's like to live in surrounded by industry and chemical plants. There are we've all grown up in this area where we have a culture rooted in waterways and outdoor life and all of these things. We have a lot of shared experiences. And I do agree with you, McQuetta. I think that COVID and all of that sort of pulled it away, right? Now we do a lot of convenient things. If I want it, I order it online. I don't have to leave my house. And there is some benefit to that, especially in communities where people suffer with disabilities that make mobility difficult. Those things are needed. But we as a community have gone from, I mean, you didn't even know what someone's religious or political background was. You might be at a restaurant together, or you all go pay your bills at the same place, and those conversations would happen, and those shared experiences, regardless of politics and religion, were enough to connect you. And so they weren't a barrier for connection, like I think in
Mhm.
some ways we feel they are now. But I think at its root, if we step out of those spaces and realize at the end of the day, like we say this all the time, we may question what people would vote for politically, or what their faith may say. But when it comes down to it, if you're face to face with someone and someone needs something, I have very rarely met a human being who was not willing to help their neighbor. And I think we have to really touch into that part of ourselves again, right? Like that we are that, and we need to be willing to express that again.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that is part of where coalitions and organizations come in, right? They can bring people together. What do you feel? What do you see when you look around Southeast Texas? What are organizations, coalitions, all people doing to bring community together?
Mhm. Mhm. I think it's like you said, Jen, just finding that common purpose. I think what I think that when we find common purpose, and also finding some neutral topics to come together around, finding something that we all we're finding a space in conversations where politics isn't so big and doesn't take up so much space, because that's what's happened. Politics has become the top priority. Like people identify with their party
Mhm.
versus like community. Like, I'm from Orange, Texas. I'm from Southeast Texas. Well, now people really want to know, what party are you?
Right.
And so I think it takes strategies, right, to create these environments that it doesn't matter what the politics are, and you find those common things. And I, like, for instance, I used to MLK Gala. We have people from all walks of life at the MLK Gala, because we all can agree that this that what his life stood for moved us forward as a whole, and it was about all of us. And that's the other part, finding something that's about all of us. And so that's what I would think is those areas that kind of can pull us all together.
That
I
that's an
love that.
interesting we that's an interesting perspective on it too, I think, because we have started to use religion and politics as the deciding factor on whether or not we'll engage further. And that is unfortunate, right? Because the truth is, our regional connections, all of us being Southeast Texans, that has more impact on our day to day life than the political party that we've ascribed to, right? So what you experience with the people in your region who you can reach out and touch has a regular daily impact on you. And so it would be nice if we could find ways to reconnect in those spaces. I think too, let's talk about ordinary people. I think Joseph said earlier, you don't have to be extraordinary, like regular people. We're building a village, right? What is it that ordinary people can do? What are some examples from history where ordinary people stood up for their community and had an extraordinary impact? Can anyone think of any of those or share some?
I can think of a few. Of course, the most notable example, and something that continues to be an ongoing conversation, is civil rights in this country.
Mhm.
Uh, it was quite literally the culmination of ordinary people in their churches, in their places of business, in their civic organizations, willing to speak, organize, and draw attention to injustice. And they did that through a number of ways, whether it was boycotts, protests, speaking at city council meetings, school board meetings, at congressional committee hearings, even prior to the civil rights era of the 60s, even really the 50s and 60s onward. You also had the women's suffrage movement.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, many of those people were made up of everyday working Americans who had a common cause. And I think that if you look at the history of any major accomplishment, any landmark legislation, even the founding of our country, it all had to do with a culmination of everyday people who decided to come together for a common cause and stayed committed to pushing that across the finish line. Um, and so I think there are a plethora of examples of the past, but also today, people who are a part of organizations or who are running for office that are shining a light on various policy issues, injustices that may occur, um, engaging with the media, making sure people are aware of the consequences of political rhetoric. I see it every day in our community, and I even see it. And I mentioned earlier how social media has led to, of course, division and also this lack of community in a way in terms of personal interaction. But it's also led to awareness. And I think that more people knowing about things that are occurring um, by default, if they have an interest in it, if they are seeing that people share similar perspectives, viewpoints, I think in a way it encourages them to get involved and ask, okay, well, how do I get involved with you? How do I participate in this effort? How often does your organization meet? Where do you meet? What time? Um, and so I think that everyday people, like all of us in this um, conversation, by taking the lead, broaching subjects, showing up, organizing, it encourages other people to do the same.
And
Absolutely.
all movements have been ordinary people.
Yes.
It's always grassroots effort that moves the top. The civil rights movement, a lot of those kids, they were kids, college and high school kids who led the sit-ins. And so you don't have to be college educated. You don't have to be a lawmaker. You don't have to be in the know. You can just go out and do an action. And I think we forget so often that we feel that imposter syndrome, like it can't be you because there must be someone else who could do it better than you. And so I think we have to remember that it's always been us. It's always been the people,
Mhm.
whether it's the workers' rights movement, suffrage, civil rights movement, it's always been us. Let's just keep reminding ourselves that we don't have to be perfect activists, organizers, people, voters. Like you don't have to be a perfect everything to just step your foot in the door and try it.
And
Right.
something else that I thought of as well, current day, we have, and people have educated me just by virtue of them being active and engaged and sharing their perspectives. And I think it's shone a light on, or rather, it shined a light on um, issues that exist with affordability, whether it's housing, healthcare, conflicts overseas, things that we see that are going on um, between Israel and Palestine, and then also, of course, in this day and age, even being informed of what's going on between Ukraine and Russia, and what is the context? I mean, if it weren't for other people speaking up, a lot of us wouldn't even really know about it. And oftentimes, people speak up from personal experience, so they have a direct connection, which is why it's so important for them. And so, I think the best way to lead and advocate is to lead from your own experiences and perspectives, and what you were hearing in your realm, and bringing that to the forefront to both encourage people in similar circumstances to feel heard and engaged, but also educate people who otherwise would have no clue or no interest. If they just so happen to see a headline, that's one thing. But if they're seeing that repetition, which is where I think a community engagement come from, I think that pays dividends, and we're seeing it in real time, not just in the past as was mentioned, but also current day.
And also,
Agreed.
whenever you think about and I agree with both of those comments, but whenever you think about how change normally happens, we forget that change happens in sparks and in these moments that come together. So reminding people that you don't have to reach everyone, you just need to contribute to those within your reach. And so it can be small things like, and then it's the small things, it's the things that's happening right around you. Sometimes you feel like we got to save the world. Just contribute to the space that you're in,
Yes.
and that causes these ripple effects in other communities that's surrounding us. And one example that I thought about as you were speaking, as you were asking the question was, I know someone who's a mayor, but before he was a mayor, he was just a football coach, but he built his reputation off of being a football coach, contributing to the community in that way. And then after building trust and credibility, then the community started to trust him, and he eventually became a mayor. But those are the ways that we get involved, and your everyday person can then become decision makers for their community. And who best to be a decision maker for a community than someone who has walked in that community and can understand what's happening within their community. And so I think that it's just remembering, for those who may feel disqualified, you are you we will feel disqualified if we're trying to save the whole world. But if we
Hmm.
just try to contribute in ways that we have competence and skills and understanding, then we will begin to change people's world. And so that's what I would believe, that just right off, just start where you can and do what you can.
And you're right, you don't have to save the world, right? Like, that's kind of the beauty of this sort of coalition building and getting out in your community and getting to know people. No one should have to do it all. Adriana, who works with all of us in Impact, most of you know her. She has this metaphor she uses about a trolley, right? You're going on a trolley, we're all going in the same direction. You jump on, you jump off when that works for you. And I think that's a great analogy in a lot of ways, right? Not only for time, money, effort, things like that, but we don't all share the same experience, life experience. We don't all share the same perspectives, but it doesn't mean we don't all believe in community and want to see our communities thrive. So you jump on in the spaces that matter to you, but I think too that when we come together like that, we're learning about the experiences of other people, other spaces. And when we work together in those coalitions on our shared experiences, I think it helps build that and bring that to the forefront, because we are working with people who are trusted in those communities, right? Instead of coming in and trying to take over, you just support people already doing the work in whatever way you can. And I think that's also a great benefit. Um, so, what is it? I want to ask a more personal question, because I know a lot of you do a lot of work. I mean, staying busy. What is it? What was the moment that you were like, this is where I'm going to jump in and get involved? What inspired you to do that? And I'd like you each to share if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
I don't know that there was one single moment for me that said,
Mhm.
like, this is the point. Um, I I spent most of my life, or large part of my life, undocumented, and I actually only became a citizen right before the 2024 election, a year before. So that was my first time ever voting, and that election, the results happened the way they did, and I felt disappointed. I felt like I wanted to do more, and it was the first time in my life that I was allowed to do more, that I could get involved. And speaking to like how important it is to give people on ramps that are easy, it was like I saw an impact mixer and it was just a social thing. And I was like, I can do a social thing. I can do a social thing with people who share my values. That's easy ask. And so I went to that and I learned from there, how can I get it? What can I do? What can a person like me who doesn't really know much, who just wants to be involved, what can I do? And I think that speaks to how important those on ramps are. Like, civic engagement isn't just direct, or like, getting people involved isn't directly, let's go block walk, let's go
Right.
raise money for a candidate. It's, let's go meet people who maybe share our values and learn, how do we even get involved? And so it wasn't just one thing. It was me, the frustration built up over years, and also someone giving me a chance and giving me an opportunity to learn how to get involved.
I think that for me, I love that what Abby shared, because I can that resonates with me. But I will be honest, as I'm sitting here reflecting, I've had moments where I got involved, or there are things I've done because I was impacted by a room that I was in. Okay, and I have this saying, impact by exposure, meaning I can put you in the right room and say 1,000 words to you in 2 minutes, right? Versus trying to get those 1,000 words out. So I try to create the room. But when I think about what got me involved was men telling me what I couldn't do. And so I was like, you're not gonna tell me what I cannot do. And so I went through this phase as a young adult where I was adamant about, I don't need your platform, I don't need your microphone, I don't need your corner lot, I don't need your permission. And so I started going to neighborhoods and reaching kids in neighborhoods and doing activities with them. And I really started that to prove I don't need anything that you have to be impactful. And so you might put me out of your space and their platform, but you're not gonna put me out of business. And
That's
so,
right.
and that's what got me going. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm attitude out here doing this, and I'm good at it. And so I kept doing it, and then from there, I found myself just believing in myself more, like, man, the last thing worked. And it just helps you to take that step. And that is the key to overcoming the imposter syndrome. Just take a tiny step.
Yep.
And then you'll realize, oh, wait, I didn't fall. It didn't mess up. It worked out pretty good. And then in building confidence as you go. So that's what happened for me. Just the idea of knowing I'm not going to let somebody tell me what I cannot do, especially, and then pick and choose what you think I can do. And then from there, I just saw that I was good at it. And then now I'm so passionate about making sure that other people know you don't have to be boxed in to
Right.
ideas that don't fit what you think about yourself. And so now that's my commitment to advocating for people to know you can do it, you know.
I just a real quick interjection on that. You're not going to tell me what I can do. I think I'm older than probably most of you on this live today. But my generation, that's one of the things I talk about a lot, and I learned this with teaching. One of the things that inspired me when I was started teaching about young people, and I don't mean permission to behave, but permission to do something, permission to speak, permission to make a difference. I think my generation, by and large, is still just waiting for permission. And one of the things I find really inspiring about younger people is they're not waiting for permission. We
Mm-hmm.
decided we want it to be better and we're going to make it that way. And I find that inspiring. So, but I'd like that was just an add on to that because I think that's incredibly inspiring. But if Christy or Joseph, you'd like to share what got you involved, I'd love to hear it.
Christy, you want to go first?
I can. Um, well, I don't know that it was necessarily one defining moment. I mean, I am a social worker, so I've that's kind of my background is in being a social justice warrior and advocating for others, and that I just happen to kind of, I guess, fell into uh, are finding, I guess, saw some posts and stuff on Facebook about this group, um, Southeast Texas Impact Initiative, and decided to check that out and see what it was about. And I just wanted something to be able to get more involved with the community and get more involved in, fighting what's going on, since this, the disappointment after the 2024 election and everything that's happened. And I just want to find a way to get more involved, with the community and fighting, fighting for others and fighting for our community. And
That's great.
Yes.
In the same vein as Christy, I don't recall a specific moment. I think, and I've talked about this a lot, I think upbringing is very important. Your surroundings, if you're fortunate enough to have a supportive family and that network. I was raised among people that were already engaged. And so it was kind of an unspoken, I guess, lack of a better word, expectation to also be engaged. I attended Hampshire Finette High School, graduated from there. And when I was in high school, I believe it was President Obama's second, before his reelection, it was a reelection attempt. And around the same time, I was involved in debate and extemporaneous speaking, specifically persuasive speaking, international affairs. And as my coach at the time always made sure we looked at all the headlines of the day, but we went beyond the headlines. We started reading the content and looking at different sources. And when you have that knowledge of you're seeking to self-educate and to improve your understanding, sometimes proven wrong, sometimes reinforced, and then seeing other classmates just state whatever it is that they were told. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not exactly how I've understood, situation A to have turned out, or situation B to have existed, or that's not what was being conveyed by this individual or that individual, or that didn't seem accurate, or that didn't happen. And seeing how easy it is for people to just accept what it is that they're told, accept what they hear without doing their due diligence. And so I started getting more interested in having those engaging conversations and pushing back on subjects and having that dialogue. And then going on through college really opened my eyes. And many of you who attended college or even just went somewhere different from your hometown or from your immediate circle, opening my eyes to how truly vast this country is, differing walks of life, perspectives, political ideologies, identities, religious affiliations, and allowing to be poured into from different groups of people to form a more accurate picture of the world. I think it just tugged on me. So that led to wanting to be engaged in organizations and running for office and serving in office and continuing to want to be engaged. I think, and anybody listening, I think the biggest thing, that moment, so to speak, arises from just taking that first step and getting out there, trying something new, listening to differing perspectives and saying, you know what, I want to participate in this activity. I want to know what this organization does. And from there, you start seeing a timeline and you recognize, I met this person, which led to that person, or I went to this organization, which led to that organization. And before you know it, you turn around and you see all of these collections of experiences and lessons and impact that you've had, that while you're in the moment, you're not really, that's not the intent. It's right. Just you're there in the moment, and we're all trying to figure out what we're doing in life. And thankfully, and I think maybe we can all share, is that upon reflection, we see how all these little seeds grew into something larger, and we were able to have an impact, make a difference, influence people, and grow. But I don't think there's ever been just one moment. I think it's just, to me, I woke up to it. that makes sense.
You were born to it. You were born to it.
I wouldn't
Uh,
say that, but yeah, I'll get used to it.
I mean, mine's kind of similar, right? I've always been, I remember in high school, I was the annoying girl who cared about the environment too much, loud about it or whatever. But there was a point in my life where I sort of stepped back from that, had a family, got married, and I still cared about everything. But I remember those feelings being re-sparked in me when I started educating. And when I became an educator, I learned more being an educator than I taught. I'll tell you that. And I mean, I taught, but I learned so much from being in different communities, meeting kids from different kinds of families, and my passion for public education grew even more, and that sort of fueled a fire in me and opened a spark that maybe wasn't as ready before, because I had a tendency to get to the precipice and back up. But I also didn't like being told I had to be quiet or wait for permission. And it was also the 2024 election for me when I said, okay, we're not going to keep sitting down about it. We got to get loud somewhere. And I know that one thing I've learned through this is I see the work being done in all these spaces, right? That I didn't know about before because my personal circle probably wasn't plugged in. But once I've gotten plugged in, the amount of people I've met just in Southeast Texas that are passionate, concerned, committed to making life better for all of us, regardless of political party, regardless of faith, regardless of economic security, whatever. It is inspiring. Like, I get chills talking about it. It's inspiring, all these people I've met, and I find myself so grateful. I say this all the time too. 2, 3 years ago, I could walk around in town and I wouldn't see a face I recognized. Now I go places and it's full of faces I know. That feels like community. It
Mhm.
feels safer. We have conversation. It's just a great space to be in. So I do think some of us having a spark that moves us into the limelight on dealing with this, throwing our faces and names out there. But I think by and large, people can feel inspired in those spaces. What I want to talk about too, we're talking about ways to get involved. We have a Good Trouble event this Sunday, which is going to be a voter education, voter rights, and we're going to have some amazing speakers. Maquetta, if you want to add on to that in just a second, I would love for you to. But what I do want to talk about is why voting. We talk a lot about voting, and it is essential. But before we even get there, community building leads us there. So I want to talk about why voting, it can't be where we start. Can't be where we start. Maquetta, do you want to tell us a little bit about Good Trouble and the point of that and our speaker that's coming and what we hope to achieve community wise there?
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. Yeah, sure. So we have a gentleman that's coming, and he is the chair for the Texas Black Coalition, and he'll be coming down to share. Brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. He's been doing this work for about 20 years now, and we call him Nick. His name is Frederick Nickens, and so he is just a phenomenal leader. And he'll be coming down to share with us about the importance of being involved and um, also regrouping. And so because we've seen a lot of regrouping taking place across the state, and so we're excited about having him come. But to your point about voting, we can't wait until these moments where we have these elections, because we live in this space every day. you
Hmm.
know and so change, I believe, has to be something that we're invested in every day, and not even just, I don't want to say change meaning that we have to always be working towards change. This idea of we're always working towards something can make people feel overwhelmed sometimes,
Hmm.
but just the idea of we have to always be participating in community.
Yes.
Okay, and I like to say having eyes for one another. We have to have eyes for our neighbors, and also a willingness. Something you said brought me back to the work that I do now. I lead culture for the company that I work for, and you know I want to say that culture and having to do the work because people were relying on me to do the work made me a better person. I
Hmm.
mean, I can't even tell you how I thought about things yesterday and how I think about things today. So I would just encourage people, you know, connect so you can see things from other perspectives and grow. It doesn't take away from who you are. It makes you better. It strengthens who you are. It strengthens you. It helps you to see your neighbors better. and contribute to these spaces where people feel safe. And I think ultimately we all share that we want to feel safe. And
Yes.
so I think that that's ultimately understanding that the work that we do daily contributes to us building these safe environments for ourselves, for our family, and also for our neighbors. And so that's ongoing work. That's not we vote periodically for leaders to
Mhm.
kind of lead the way on that, but we contribute to that every day.
Yes. What is one common misconception? All of you have organized in various spaces and done it fairly successfully. What is one misconception you hear or that you think people have about community organizing?
I
I'll
think about the
start.
community. Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. Go, Abigail.
Not really about like the organizing itself, but more about the community that you are organizing. I think so often we think people are apathetic. That is far from the truth. People are not apathetic. They just don't know what they can do. They feel like they don't have a way to change anything. And
Mhm.
I think that's up to us as organizers or people who are advocates for our community to help them see. But I think so often we think that people are apathetic, and they're not. If you have conversations with them, they care. I mean, they'll complain to you for like 30 minutes about grocery prices. So they definitely
Right?
care. So,
Yes.
I mean, I think that's what we have to remember as organizers is people do care. Let's make it easy for them to show that.
Right.
That's great.
And also that people want to, that I think a misconception is that people don't, that you won't find anyone that can connect and share that. And,
Mm.
I think somewhere we've heard people say, if you have that question, someone else may have that question. Or if you're thinking that, someone else may be thinking that. So I think just don't underestimate who else would be and want to be involved. And then for those of us who have been doing this work for a little bit, when we see these sparks coming up from people, remember what it was like to be that person to have that idea spark and then try to be an ally for that person or a supporter because, that's what happened for me. Charlotte Moses in Port Arthur, she's the mayor of Port Arthur now. But when I had the idea about the gala, I'm just this little girl with no resume about doing community work other than small things. And I said, hey, I want to do this. And she could have turned me away, but she didn't. She said, hey, and I'm coming on board to help get it done. And
Hmm.
so, and because of her, we built this thriving event that's a successful event, but we wouldn't have been able to do it without someone that was experienced with events saying, hey, I'll support you getting that done.
I think for
I mean, I
me,
find people often receptive, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think all of us here started as just somebody in our community who was like, we got to do something. So let's see what we can do.
That's it.
And all of us started, like I say all the time, I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody. I just want to see my community thrive. And if all of us nobodies in our community commit to making it thrive, we are the community. So
Right.
the result will be what it is, and a lot of that has to do with not only how we build together inside of our communities, but how we encourage each other to show up to vote for leadership that cares about our communities. All of those things matter. Um, okay so to that end, we're talking a lot about how people don't know how to get involved, and maybe that's prohibiting. What
Mm.
is one thing you would tell somebody this week? This is what you can do to get started. Something easy, tangible that they can jump in and do.
I think have a
go to the event
conversation.
on Sunday.
Say
Hey,
that.
Just
Okay.
show up.
Abby says have a conversation. What'd you say, Joseph?
Just show up to the event Sunday.
That's yes, that's good. Yes. And have
But I think that's
conversations there.
that's the biggest thing is just showing up.
Hmm.
That's 90% of the work there is showing up, being visible, and figuring out how you as a puzzle piece fit in to the greater picture. Um, I think, I mean, in my experience, I've met a great number of people simply by showing up to an event, attending a function, whether they be the NAACP, Southeast Texas Impact Initiative, the Rotary Club, um, volunteering at the soup kitchen. I mean, you name it, you're coming across people who have their own network, and you can tap into that. You find out that they have weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings. They have events coming up, and you can attend. And, it's That's the biggest thing to me. You're not going to be able to get to know your community if you simply avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean you have to show up alone. I mean, I
Mhm.
doing been involved and engaged for years, but I seldom ever show up to a function or event or meeting alone. I like having people around me. Um, it gives that level of confidence, regardless of how people perceive you, to have somebody that you can say, that's kind of crazy. Or, the other thing is, oh, this is something you and I can do. We can get together
Yeah.
uh, and make it fun. Uh, it doesn't all have to be serious and stressful. It's
Mhm.
just taking that first step.
Yeah, and I think we need to remember that we can expand what civic engagement means. It doesn't just mean voting. It doesn't just mean
Right.
being a voter. But civic engagement is being involved and caring about your community in some form or fashion. And that could be teaching your little league, becoming a coach. Like there's so many ways that we can get involved. We don't have to immediately go to, the big things like civics. It can be
Yeah.
something easy. It can be something in your
Yes.
community. And
Mhm.
like Joseph said, just show up to it. Like just go see what it's about.
Yeah,
Right.
we always say whether we're serving 1 or 1,000, we show up. We
And
show up.
even if you show up and you don't like the experience, okay, don't go back to that meeting. Go to a different one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the beauty
Mm-hmm.
of our community. There are numerous options. You don't
Mhm.
have to be in a situation you don't want to be in. This group's not for me. Fine. Okay, mark it off. Go to the next one. You'll
Yeah.
find something that pulls at your heartstrings and makes you feel like you can contribute your talents and your knowledge to the betterment of your community. And as
Yeah.
Abby said, it doesn't have to be running for office. It doesn't have to be being a member of a huge civic group. It can be mentoring youth,
Mm-hmm.
volunteering in your school district,
Mhm.
uh, going to a community baseball game.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to be the person in the spotlight.
Mhm.
Even people think I don't have the money. I don't have. Well, I mean, there's even events where you can go for free, and you may end up saying, you know what, I could donate $5, or it was mentioned about a gala. Well, you may not be the speaker, you may not be the person that's the focus, you may not be able to get a table, but even in your ticket purchase, whatever that amount may be, is contributing to something greater than yourself. And to me, that's just as fulfilling as leading a group of 10,000.
Yeah. And for us, by the way, no shame here. Our gala is very reasonably priced. But but will say this. During the summer, um, I have some people around that's always asking like, how do we do this? How do we do this? And believe it or not, you don't have to start outside of your family.
Mhm.
You can start right with your own family. I have all of my children are grown, but my brother's children, these people think I work for them. And so these little people, I'm the boss. They're the boss of me. So, but one thing that they like to do is they like to stay active. And I one day that one wanted to go to the soup kitchen. Next thing you know,
Mhm.
it's 10 of them going to the soup kitchen once a week.
Aw,
And we did
that's
that all
nice.
summer. Then
Mhm.
we had a T-shirt, then we got a logo, and then other people wanted to come, and it was a thing. And I can't tell you how many times I have built a community of young people just like that,
Yeah.
just with the kids I had access to and the kids they have access to. Asking your kid, hey, once you and a friend come sit down. I'll take you out for this or that, and just have a small conversation with them. I talk to them about serving the community and taking care of people. Um, when we would go to the soup kitchen, and this is a thing for these kids. They couldn't wait until the next week so that they could do it again. And so, it doesn't have to be um, always let me find something to do with strangers. Find something to do right with the people that you're connected with, and don't underestimate what that can become. Because as Joseph just shared, we all have our own networks, and even your children have a network. So if
Mhm.
you can sit down with
Mhm.
your children and your children's, all of the mentorship that I've done hundreds of kids, but every one of those kids was connected to one of my kids.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so it was that group would just grow and grow and grow. And then we start fresh with the next kid. And
Mhm.
so, just don't underestimate where change can start and where getting involved can start.
Well, as we get close to closing up here, I do want to ask one more question of everybody, because I think this is important. I know we all live in a time right now where it feels like everything's a challenge. Everything feels hard. But I want to know, despite the challenges that we currently face, what is it that gives you hope? What gives you hope?
I'll say, I think you said it earlier about how like getting involved, you've like met people and now you recognize people in your community. That I think action is what leads to hope because when you get active, when you're involved, you see the other people who are also involved and how much and they inspire you and that gives you hope. I don't think you're hopeful and then you get involved. I think hope comes from being involved and seeing
Yes.
all the great things that are happening. And so that's what gives me hope is just having other people find that when they get involved and seeing that there is good happening in our community, regardless of what the news says about everything, there is good. And that is hopeful to me.
I love that because I that is what does it for me, right? Like I can feel burnout, exhausted, tired, right? We all work. We all have families. We all have all the obligations everybody else has, right? And there are times where I'm like, okay, I'm too tired. I can't do this. And I go anyway. And when I leave, it's like a whole new lease on life. I am poured into by the people in my community. I'm inspired and energized by them. And that keeps me going. Just everyone that we want to make life better for ourselves, for everybody else, spending time with them in your community can really build you back up and give you that hope and that energy to keep going. All right, somebody else share what your hope is.
Well, it's the same as what y'all are saying. It's, the fact that through all of this, through our advocacy, through our communities that we're building, we're realizing that we're not alone. And
Mhm.
even when this is all over with, these relationships that we're building and these friendships we're building, that's going to last way beyond this current administration, way beyond, Trump. What we're building is something lasting, and the communities that we're building, that's going to just continue to grow.
Mhm.
And I believe that I believe in. I think that when we look over when we reflect and look over what we have accomplished as a country, I find hope in knowing that humanity finds a way.
Mhm.
And so, first, I find hope in that. The next thing is that I find hope in progress. Progress, no matter how big or small it is forward. And knowing that we're taking a step forward. Even this, being able to get up and still organize action and still get people together. This gives me hope because, like Christy just said, we're not alone, and we have one another to draw strength from. Knowing this is not a time to give up. This is a time where we lock arms and we continue to live up to our reputation as humanity, which is we find a way forward. We find a way. I believe in light, right, good, love. We find a way to all of those things. Okay,
Yes.
and so that's what gives me hope.
Uh, I think people give me hope. Over the years, moments where I felt like a task was insurmountable or um, burnt out, bone tired, wanting to just give up, having other people around me who say, "Hey, what can I help with?" Or,
Mhm.
what are we going to do today? And also experiencing that level of accountability where people may tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I've noticed you haven't shown up to this,"
Mhm.
or "Why haven't you talked about that?" It's, for a lack of a better word, community. I mean,
Mhm.
to me, I get hope from other people.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
not someone that finds hope within myself. I'm not one of those people. I'm motivated by others. I can get going, but then as I start getting tired, I have other people around me. I can cross that finish line. I can
Yeah.
finish the race.
Well, and that's the point, isn't it? That's the whole point of community. You don't ever have to go it alone. And there's a support system, a village, so that if you are struggling, just like doing community service, donation drives, filling those gaps so people don't feel like they're alone and they can't get to the finish line. Your community's here, we support each other, and we help each other cross it. So I think that's very important. Thank you. Is there anything anybody in particular would like to add to the conversation that you think is important for people to know? Well, I'm going to close it up here. And I just want to say, I want to remind everybody, as we've talked about tonight and from what we've seen, strong communities aren't built by just a few extraordinary people. They're built by ordinary people who decide to show up consistently. Democracy is not a spectator sport, but neither is community. If you're waiting for the village, this is your reminder. You're it. You are the village. So I want to thank all of our guests and everyone who joined us tonight in the chat. If this conversation encouraged you, share it. Invite someone into the conversation. Find a way to get involved this week. Good Troubles on Sunday, and it's in Orange, Beaumont, and Port Arthur. So that's a great opportunity. Um, and then if you enjoy this platform or these conversations, make sure you subscribe so that you can get them. We're here every Thursday live on Let's Talk Impact. So good night, everyone, and thank you for joining us. All right, we're gonna close out.
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
close it out. Yeah, yeah.